Earlier in 2018, in February, I told my team that I was one of the survivors of Larry Nassar, who is the doctor from MSU and the U.S. Olympic doctor for the women's gymnastics team. I saw him when I was 11 years old to the time I was 15. And so it's been a very intense last year. Not just for me, but for the 3 people that I work with that had to take on my absences for when I had to go meet with my lawyer, my absences when I had to go to hearings in Washington, D.C., and my absences for when I was really, really sick. Part of the physical manifestation from my trauma from him was I have endometriosis.
Because she was such a little girl, I was at the doctor with her all the time. So when Larry Nassar was arrested, she was the first person I called, and for the whole year, she said she hadn't had anything happen. And as she kept getting more sick and more sick and more sick, then I started to sense that that wasn't true.
I wasn't going to come forward at all. The idea of having to put something on my family that I had been dealing with for 14 years that I knew was incredibly hard. It seemed selfish to put onto someone else to have to deal with. And then after the trial, when the woman spoke, it was one of those things where I was like, I can't be quiet. And it's brought us all a lot closer, but it's been very, very painful.
It's so interesting because who she was before 14 and who she was at 27 when we found out, that gap in years before, in between, I didn't remember what kind of kid she was before. So I had no idea how deep of a thinker she was and how much she absorbed and kept in. So those 14 years while we didn't know anything, she kept to herself. She withdrew. We had to keep pulling her out of her. And then by the time this happened, she has processed everything that has happened over these years. And she's braver than anyone I've met. And she's more grateful than anyone I've met. She's so grateful to the women who came before her, because I don't think she would have without them. And they helped her be brave. And after meeting all the other women and watching, it's exactly the same. They all have had these experiences. I think the most important thing that I've learned, and I would want other moms and dads to learn it too, is that your perspective isn't always right. Why I thought she wasn't well. I didn't ask enough questions. Maybe if I'd asked more questions, she could have maybe come out sooner, but I didn't even enter my mind something like that could have happened to her. It wasn't even on my radar. The next thing that I think is the most important thing is that if anyone doubts there's a mind-body connection, that when the mind isn't healthy, the body is going to not be healthy either. And I watched it. And so when your child or someone is really sick, but you don't know why, there's a core to it. I have such strong feelings, and so I'll probably keep it just brief, is that the institutions and the adults that knew about this for over 22 years, that still needs a lot of attention. And the administrations of all those need to be changed in order for it to prevent it from ever happening again. And what's in the newspapers is only about 1/10 of what is true. There's a lot that still needs to happen. It's important to Alex, it's important to these survivors, that until it's all changed around and the people that were there are no longer there, then we'll have some safety and things will change.
I don't think I could be more grateful for a group of 4 people. For a few years before I told anyone, I was getting more aggressively sick and I was missing more and more work, and they never skipped a beat to make sure that I was taken care of, that I didn't feel bad about missing, and that my shift wasn't covered. And that's a lot to ask of people without even giving them a reason. So when I came to explain what had happened to me, they all continued. It was like nothing had changed. They didn't skip a beat. They just made sure that I was where I needed to be and got the help that I needed to get. So it's just been, for me, a lot more therapeutic than I think most get, and I'm very grateful for that.
This has allowed for all of us to talk about things we don't normally talk about. Sexual abuse is not something that's easy to discuss, and it's even hard to talk to employees about it. Now it's a general consensus that the truth will set you free. So when we all have problems, even in a meeting, we talk about them. There isn't any more like, well, I'm going to wait for a better moment, I'm going to talk later. It has created an atmosphere of honesty.